All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. Over on Rumble, of course, I do see chat is working as usual. Cam2425IA, Clank, now I need coffee. Illustrator says Wednesday. Nick Ray 47, morning from Ohio, Sticks. And Baskajira says Clank. Yes, indeed, it is Wednesday. And we are live on Rumble. No longer have to refresh the page to make sure, which is always a good thing. Anyway, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. One thing notably absent, we're not going to talk about the Trump indictment because indictment gate at this point has become a farce. I talked about it this morning in a standalone video. There's no further update to be given. People talk it into the ground when they should be talking about all the weird shit involving the Biden crime family. And it's basically a distraction. Don Jr., by the way, posting earlier, isn't it funny that every time that Trump gets indicted on a new charge, it's about a day after, or within the same 24-hour cycle usually, of some sort of revelation with regards to the Biden crime family. This is totally coincidental, we're told. It's a conspiracy theory to think otherwise, of course. And we'll be talking about Trump's polling, though, first and foremost. He's now riding at almost 36 points ahead in the pack. It's pretty much a sealed deal at this point. I'll be analyzing that. Also, what Hunter Biden told his partner, Devin Archer, and this was reported, of course, this is part of his testimony, is so far beyond the pale, so nuts that we have to talk about it. And also, ECOWAS is threatening to invade Niger, actually, over in Africa. And it could actually happen. Nigeria alone has enough troops to overrun the country. We're talking about maybe 10,000 resistance fighters against a force numbering several 100,000. It would not be, it would be a fairly lopsided fight if that turns out to be the case. Also, we're going to talk about DeSantis cope because there's a lot of it right now. And we've got one particular example from Kurt Schlichter. Yes, our favorite friend Kurt, who he's like Geraldo Rivera. Sometimes he'll come out with a take that's really good. And then other times he comes out with something so terribly cringe and so over the top nonsensical that it's like it nullifies all the good takes. Geraldo blocked me, so I can't see any of his hype and hysteria anymore, but I can see Kurt Schlichter still. So we'll be talking about that one. We'll be talking about William Wallace, actually. G. Fazor, chances partisan DC judge and jury convict Trump. Very high, actually. It's fairly likely that they will vote to convict Trump in the end. And we'll see what happens. Dragged out in procedure, carefully timed for the general election, most likely, after Trump has already clinched the nomination. Then you can expect them to go all in. It's clear right now, and we'll talk about his polling as well, tangentially related to this. Yes, the death penalty does actually apply to some of the charges involved, which is so far beyond the pale, so heinous, and so nuts that at this point, all decorum has been breached. Our republic, to be clear, is actually in danger at the moment. The lawless so-called legal system has been weaponized by a political faction known as the uniparty to try to stop Trump because they are afraid of him coming back in and establishing more populistic norms and reforms. That is what is happening now. The people at large are rejecting the legal premise of this, which is to the advantage of the uniparty if they play their cards right, and they do intend to try to do so. What they're hoping for is to get Trump, Trump gets nominated. That's probably going to happen. And then they hammer him. Once he's already in the general election, they drag him off the campaign trail constantly. They put the ankle monitor on him, which actually for fundraising purposes would be great for him because they can sell fake ankle monitors, actually, and I'm sure that millions of people would buy them, and that would be a good idea. They will try to hamstring him, to tie him down with legalese to prevent him from talking, to try to drag him into court even more if he says something in a rally that displeases a judge in any way, and he'll be fending off 3 or 4 different cases at the same time. This is their goal. Their goal is to silence Trump, and in silencing Trump, what they're really seeking to silence is populism. It presents the only legitimate threat to the uniparty establishment that exists today. This is exactly their goal. They have no other methodology by which they can stop him because Joe Biden, rigged in as asterisk steward, as puppet, has not done a good job. People understand that, and he is very weak. To defend Joe Biden and to keep the uniparty can kicking down the road, they have to do something legal about Donald Trump. They're absolutely terrified by the man. Trump is not, however, and I need to make this clear to all of you, the only solution. In fact, he's only a small part of it. Re-electing Donald Trump would be a huge cock smack in the face of the establishment. It'd be like pimp slapping a hoe, basically. It's great, but it needs to go along with on-the-ground activism for down-the-ballot candidates in the House, the Senate, etc., to go around people like McConnell and McCarthy, who are wolves in sheep's clothing, to go around the uniparty system in general. It starts with improving your own life and your own livelihood, to make a little bit of time for civic awareness, number one, and civic activism, number two. And things will get very messy, by the way, if Donald Trump is actually put in a prison cell. Unfortunately, the uniparty would like that because people's reaction can then be cast off as terrorism or riotous behavior. Oh, look at how violent the Trump fans get. Yeah, we're overhauling the entire Republican system of government we've had for almost 2.5 centuries. Yeah, we've thrown out all civic decorum, and we're a bunch of idiots, and we don't understand diplomacy. And when we do understand it, it's only to the point where we're screwing our own people. But look at how violent and evil the Trump fans are. That is what they intend to do. It is plain as day at this point what their basic strategy will be. Front load an enormous number of charges against Trump, try to get him prosecuted, or hold it over the head of the general election. So they may not proceed with those trials in an expedient manner. They might get bogged down deliberately in proceedings. And then, of course, they simply hold it over the head of the American people, especially Republicans, and say, well, do you really want to elect a man who's going to end up in jail after he's elected? Thus, his vice presidential choice definitely matters, by the way, at that point. That is their goal. That's their goal. They may or may not be successful. Now, there are a lot of people that are speaking out against it. Not all of them are rock-ribbed Republicans or even conservatives. Of course, I've never been either. I speak out against it on a regular basis because it's phony. It's a goddamn witch hunt. We know that it is. You're expecting me to believe that the entire system of corrupt individuals that I know are corrupt, I'll keep repeating this as often as I have to, banksters, corporatists, Silicon Valley tech CEOs, people in Congress, a bunch of certain governors, a bunch of politicians, sleazebag lawyers and stuff, all of a sudden, despite screwing the American people for decades in many cases, all of a sudden got together and decided one unique individual was so far beyond redemption and so depraved that they decided to become a bunch of democracy fighters. I don't believe that. I can't believe that. It makes absolutely no sense. These people are still corrupt sleazebags. Instead, I choose to believe that Trump genuinely wants to break their toys, reform the nation at least somewhat, bring us back to like an early 80s populism, do a soft reset, and he's the reformer. And they're standing in his way now through the legal system because they're afraid of that happening, because then we will have several more decades of unimpeded growth for the middle class. That's basically what they fear. They fear upward mobility for the people that they really want to be slaves. As far as his polling goes, though, things are definitely looking up for Trump. Right now in the aggregate, he's 35.8 points ahead of DeSantis. DeSantis is about at 18 points. I would point out something. Trump is very close to his all-time high in polling right now, and DeSantis is literally at his all-time low since he announced his campaign. In fact, you have to go back to long before he announced his campaign before you can find another low of that point. It was the middle of 2022. Actually, around this same time that DeSantis was slightly lower than he's currently polling at. Nobody else has a pulse. Ramaswamy is following the same trajectory I predicted, which is he had his Kamala moment with Tucker Carlson in Iowa. He rose up and then he falls back down, probably not to the old floor, but he falls back down to maybe 4 points or so. Mike Pence is done. He's been effectively obliterated and castrated, just like William Wallace was before he was drawn and quartered and beheaded. Haley's gone nowhere. She's been almost completely linear this entire time. Her heyday was actually back in March when she was running at around 6 points, but that was before some of the other also-rans got into the race. We're seeing the exact same trajectory within the primaries that we saw in 2016. A never-Trumper rises up. They have a good debate performance. They have a good soundbite. They do something, they hold an abnormally large rally, and it really gets people fired up. They go up, they double their vote share, they look briefly viable, and then they fall back down. As far as DeSantis, he's the Jeb Bush of this cycle, or the Elizabeth Warren if you wanted to appeal to the other side. He's going to be the also ran within the range of viability. He's going to come in second in some of the first starting states. That's basically his legacy at this point. Rather sad to see a dude who had a pretty good chance at 28 fall so hard. And we'll be talking about some of that cope later, by the way. Big Floppa. I just realized I'm only 30 minutes away from Roanoke, Texas. Need to go get me some infamous biltongs from Anton's now. Probably a good decision. John Smith, shout out please at the libs of Reddit. Okay, there you go. You have a shout out fresh on the screen. The Patriot Cairo. I will stand with the guy who corrupt China-backed globalist traders hate and foment political persecution because his allegiance is with us. Exactly. Know a person by their enemies. Like, look at who my enemies are for the most part. I mean, other than, legacy media neocons and stuff, it's a bunch of commies. I feel pretty good about myself. The Agal Faces, felony speed ticket charge for little Donnie Wen. Yes, his motorcade went too fast. They were artificially upgrading it to a felonious attempted vehicular manslaughter or something like that. Ozzy's Robots. Morning sticks, clankers, married off my second son, and now, like Trump, have to litigate a bullshit frivolous lawsuit paying an attorney $900 hourly. Interesting. You're getting sued by someone? Over what? I have some fucking corporation. Mavius Mar. Hey, Sticks, did you know that Kamala in Finnish means horrible? I've been told that a couple of times before. I cannot vouch for whether that's true because I do not speak Finnish, but I have heard it, yes. Cam2425IA. I don't think they realize precedent being set. It's similar to Harry Reid and the 2/3 vote. It will be used against them. Yeah, well, it won't be used against the uniparty if the uniparty continues to predominate. It doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans. They are all the same. They simply have a different letter after their name. They're feeling perfectly fine about it. Cole Ross. Ohioans, protect our Constitution. Vote yes on 1. So, yeah, Donald Trump is now almost 36 points ahead. And this is an aggregate. This isn't a single poll. This is a poll of polls. If it were like he's 15 points ahead, you could say, okay, maybe he ends up losing a starting state anyway because, at the end people switch their votes or something. That would be statistically unusual, but it's feasible. 36 points, though, I'm thinking not. The state in which he has the least lead, he's still about 20 points ahead, which is New Hampshire. He's comfortably ahead in South Carolina and Nevada. I don't see anyone really getting up towards Trump territory. Next news story. This is a bizarre one. And I saw this and I chuckled. Not as much as I chuckled last night with the Lizzo story. Yeah, she's being sued by 3 backup dancers for sexual harassment. Took them to the red light district, actually in Amsterdam, so about an hour and a half away from here, and was having them eat bananas out of hookers' vaginas, and among other things. And she was watching. I thought that was hilarious. Sort of had a jovial breakdown last night. That was a fun one. This is also funny, though. Hunter Biden told Archer that Chinese chairman loved him for his last name and his posse of godlike Aryan men. Yes. Hunter Biden told business partner Devin Archer that the Chinese tycoon who helped him secure a multi-million-dollar venture in the communist state loved him for his last name. I can imagine because, Biden, okay, you've got some clout. And for always traveling with handsome, godlike Aryan men, according to emails reviewed by Fox News Digital. In the 2011 email thread, so this is old business. It doesn't have anything to do with anything contemporary, but it's funny anyway. Hunter bragged to Archer about his relationship with Che Feng, a Chinese business tycoon who they referred to as the super chairman. The emails show that Feng helped Hunter's firm Rosemont Seneca Partners and James Bulger's firm Thornton Group LLC secure their partnership with Jonathan Lee's firm Bohai Capital in order to later launch Bohai Harvest RST, which is controlled by Bank of China Limited. And I guess he impressed them by being surrounded by strong Aryan men and stuff like that. It's like, is this a comic strip series? Something like that. It sounds like something out of the 1960s, like, you know, the white colonizer goes to the third world and they're all in awe of him because he's got, like, you know, these 6'4" bodyguards all named Sven or something like that. Oh my God, what a god man, or something like that. It's almost like a walking goddamn stereotype. And of course, Hunter's not being grilled about the fact that he supposedly told this to Devon Archer, whose testimony is considered credible even by liberals. They just happen to spin it into, well, Joe never had any conversations about Hunter's business with his business partners. As on the call, they never brought that part up, though. It was just about the weather and what they ate last night. Tom McGrory. Hi, Sticks. Did you see RFK expose China's ownership of the hog industry in North Carolina? Do you think this will shed light on the food industry, causing change? Nope. RFK Jr. unfortunately has already been defanged as a conspiracy theorist, and all of his fans tarred and feathered as being basically just MAGA. He's supported by right-wing extremists, which makes absolutely no sense, but that's the propagandistic lie that they're going with. And so he's been basically hobbled. They've kneecapped RFK Jr. He's going to stall out at 2025. He's not a threat to Joe Biden. I would point out, by the way, that if in New Hampshire and Iowa decide not to go along with the DNC's swap plan as far as the first primary states, RFK Jr. could outperform there but not get a delegate because they wouldn't be able to allocate delegates, which would, by the way, look a little bit sleazy. I think that would piss off some Dem partisans. To be clear, RFK Jr.'s coalition is more the Union Dem side that would otherwise, by the way, support Trump, as they did in 2016 and to an extent 2020. They crossed the lines. It was sort of like the Democrats for Reagan sort of thing back in the 80s. Right now, they're mainly stumping for RFK Jr. They simply happen not to be leftoid or fully neoliberal Democrats, and that is a problem for him because that coalition is a minority group within the Dem Party. Ozzy's Robots. Crazy how quick media tried to blackpill Trump fans. Yes, he's done this time. How many times have we heard that before? He can't recover from this. He's going to be in jail. Maybe he'll get the death penalty. Yeah, that would go over really, really well with the American people. That wouldn't cause any protests whatsoever. It wouldn't cause any riots whatsoever. It wouldn't cause people to go in a woods whatsoever. It would be perfectly fine. The American people being long-suffering ants, I suppose, in the minds of the deep state. 487 Sean Tower. Trump needs to announce Lake as VP in replacement if he is barred. I think that Lake is on the list, but she's certainly not the only one. One of the news stories I was going to cover, but I bounced it, was how Trump is getting in thick with Kristi Noem, who would also be a decent choice for VP. RZ the Legend. Does neocon Ron sound accurate? I don't think he's a full-on neocon. I put him in the missing link conservative category along with Ted Cruz. I think it's more that he's just self-serving rather than he's a complete globalist. Mulgara 85. Morning, Sticks. I turned 24 today, so let's celebrate with a clank. Enjoy your birthday, my man. Or woman, I'm not exactly sure. Or Zier, you know. I don't want to misgender anyone if I'm live on YouTube. Bayon 201, good morning from Stowe, Vermont. When Hunter Biden NFT trading cards. Yeah, he can do his art as NFTs. He'd probably make just as much money since a bunch of Chinese businessmen would apparently buy them. What's the problem with it? Yeah, at least you're a good capitalist, just not a talented one. No, I like Rand Paul as running mate, but it's unlikely. Carrie Lake is at the top of the list. DeSantis has effectively sworn off the concept, but as we've seen, sometimes politicians change their minds, so there's still a possibility. I just don't think it'd be a good idea. I don't think that Trump and DeSantis would get along together. I think it'd be a rather hostile White House environment, actually, were he elected. Kristi Noem's on the list. There are others. Ramaswamy is on the list, although I've soured on him to some extent. Over the TPP thing. D7 Origin, what's your favorite dirty name? Dixon Cider makes me laugh every time. Well, the normal basic bitch go-to is Mike Hunt, so sort of like Mike Pence. He is a cunt, I mean, isn't he? Next news story. What would West African bloc's threat to use force to restore democracy in Niger look like? I've been told it's Niger, which, you know, I'm obviously on a YouTube stream. I have to be careful how I even pronounce that. I don't actually know the proper pronunciation. I'm not 100% sure. West Africa's regional bloc known as ECOWAS has threatened the use of force if ousted president of Niger is not reinstated within 1 week, but how the body would carry out the threat seems unclear. Yes, they have officially put the junta, basically, that's in charge there, on notice that if the president is not restored to power, they're going to invade, potentially. But first, they use some weasel words, and secondly, it's not clear how they would coordinate it. You see, the member states, by and large, have small militaries, other than Nigeria. Nigeria, and to an extent, Ghana. They have relatively advanced militaries for the continent of Africa. Nigeria has 250,000 troops available, although many of them are reservists. They would kick the shit out of the military groups that have taken over Niger. They would decimate them. It probably wouldn't even take a day. If I were there, I'd be shitting my pants. If I had a force of 10,000 men and all of a sudden a force of 200,000 men comes, I probably flee into exile. I go over to Chad or something like that. Or I just stand down and say, okay, the party's over. We've had our fun. This may or may not happen, though, because they're using weasel words of saying, we will consider the use of force. We may use we will consider all options up to and including invading your country. Well, that seems like a little bit of a scapegoat, a way out now linguistically, isn't it? You're saying, well, we might just sanction you. You're a landlocked country, and if we blockade you, you're fucked economically. We'll just outlast you. A month later, maybe the rebels there fall. Or we may invade. Or we may just do some targeted strikes, maybe a drone strike here and there. By the way, most of these countries are West aligned, other than Niger and a couple of suspended members that have leaned off towards the East Bloc, like Mali, Burkina Faso, for example. If the West were to arm them, it would be a very quick war. I don't think Wagner Group, notwithstanding, I don't think it would be like Ukraine, because you don't have a lot of a domestic force to actually fight. And most of the country is Sahara, so you're not fighting there anyway. Only a small portion of that country and Chad and a few of the other neighboring nations is actually arable, is actually capable of being inhabited. So unless you want to move out into a cave in the middle of the Badlands sticking out of the side of the Sahara, you're sort of limited in your combat operations to the area of the country that happens to be closest to the ECOWAS states and can be invaded fairly quickly. If you drive an opponent off into the desert, they're going to take massive attrition very, very quickly. What are they going to do? In the age of drones and air forces, they're going to camp out like nomads 500 years ago around the oasis and regroup and do some border raiding or something. That's no longer, with modern militaries, it's no longer really a thing. It's not like also a nation like Afghanistan where there's a lot of mountains and cliffs and caves and stuff. A lot of the country really is nothing more than open desert. It's not inhabitable. There are a handful of settlements out there along dirt roads that connect a series of oases, and that's literally all you have in more than half of the country of Niger. So we'll see what happens, but an invasion does seem possible. Chad Scott, it's pronounced Niger, French, for your information. I think that they like to pronounce it differently, though, because of French colonialism, if I remember correctly. I think there's actually two competing pronunciations. But again, I'll use Niger. That's fine. Niger. No, there are no snails in this country. At least I can get an American cigarette. Garrett, considering running for office myself for Michigan rep at some point. One of my primary goals would be going after the NFA. A noble goal. You should consider it. Alan Smithy, good morning from Sleazy Peas in Roanoke, Texas. Come get your crack fix with promo code STICKS. Hashtag Clank Nation. Yeah, at this point, we're mixing memes. King of Biltong, speaking of Antons. Good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Free shipping on your Biltong on AntonUSA.com and landofbiltong.com using code STICKS. Have a great day, everyone. Hashtag Clank Nation. The Biltong Fund just keeps getting bigger every single weekday, so when I get there, I'm going to be out of stock. Wasted Bonehead. Good morning from the grave. Our resident zombie has finally woken up. Of course, zombies don't have to sleep too much, but they prefer to do so because they're brain dead. They got a problem. So that's why zombies eat brains. They got to, continuously replenish the neuron supply. Anyways, we got to talk about Kurt Schlichter. Yes, again, he's basically become a meme. Kurt Schlichter he's a commentator and does whatever else, I don't know, on the news or some shit. And he's like Geraldo Rivera. So he'll have one take that'll be good. Like his take on the indictment gate scandal made sense. Basically like, oh, you don't know what's happening. Here's a run up. Basically, the rule of law is dead. They're just trying to persecute Trump, and they're doing it because they're afraid of him. Well, I agree, Kurt. But then he has this take, and link in the description. You can, of course, follow along. By the way, again, pinned at the top of chat on YouTube and cross-platform in the description. You can also go to my books blogs to get some good shit there. Occultism, politics, satire, weird grave humor, and creepy shit. It's all there, and it's ever expanding. So take a look at the Tarl Warwick Books blog on Blogspot or WordPress. Substack forthcoming soon. As far as this story goes, he's comparing DeSantis fans to this scene from Braveheart. You know the scene from Braveheart where Mel Gibson as William Wallace and the Scots there charge into the English ranks and start cutting a rug. I pointed out on this that I thought it was an apt comparison. It's actually mimetically comparable. William Wallace was a loser. William Wallace failed. Scottish nationalists remember him as a national hero. He's not remembered by anyone else who didn't watch Braveheart anywhere else in the goddamn world. He's a relic. William Wallace was, if you look at the early battles he had, okay, there were some skirmishes, and those are even odds. 50 dudes fighting 50 other dudes. A few heads get hacked off. There's some bleeding and stuff. They drag off the battlefield, and then they go about their business. William Wallace at Falkirk got completely decimated and had to flee. He then went to France. I'm really truncating the story here. I can't remember the exact name of the battle, but they were on a bridge, and Wallace managed to overwhelm the English forces there by using pikemen. And it's not 100% clear whether the bridge collapsed, sending a bunch of people into the water, or whether it was deliberately throttled by the English upon retreat. There's some non-canonical stuff in there, of course. And Braveheart has been castigated for being massively historically accurate because, of course, this particular battle doesn't even feature a bridge in the movie, that is. William Wallace was defeated over and over again after his one major military victory. He fled to France. He unsuccessfully, for about 5 years, lobbied them to get involved with the war that was going on there to support the Scottish cause of independence. And in the end, he went back to England, terrorized some peasants, and then got executed. They castrated him. They drew and quartered him, strangled him as well, roughly at the same time. They hanged him partially. Beheaded him after boiling his own innards right in front of his still living head and torso, and then tarred and feathered his head and put it on a pike. That's his eventual fate. He lost. Scotland lost. They're still subjugate to England to this day. So yeah, that sounds like DeSantis. He's basically a rebel without a cause. He's got a lost cause sort of war going on politically that he wants to wage, and in the end, he'll lose. And the uniparty that he's, supposedly ostensibly fighting against in the end will be his undoing. It won't be Trump doing that. If Trump is elected, he's not going to retaliate against DeSantis. He'll just ignore him and insult him. The uniparty, though, may retaliate against DeSantis in the end. If they get that dominance, that power that they truly want, yeah, they'll go after anyone who's populistic. So if you're actually fighting for a noble cause, you get fucked. I would point out again, there's another side. William Wallace also was just a standard leader of his time. He was an oligarch. He was literally he was one of the guardians of Scotland, so-called, an oligarchic sort of elder council. And he ended up effectively leaving that position to go to France because he was a loser. So yeah, I would say that the comparison is apt, but not for the reasons that Kurt Schlichter is actually dreaming up. The idea is you've got this cinematic battle, and look at these Scots. They charge in. They won't take no for an answer. They won't take surrender. Wipe out the English forces. Yeah, man, we're rebels. That's not DeSantis. You're comparing yourself with a goddamn fictional account based on mostly fictional premises of the one successful battle that was ever waged by a dude that spent the subsequent half a decade in exile. Yeah, that's the greatest comparison for DeSantis that I can think of to really get your scrotum swollen. Wonderful. Chad Scott, can we talk about South Africa's genocidal Rwanda-like kill the Boer chanting at massive rally of black people? White farmers are warned. Yeah, I do find it funny that it's not considered hateful in any way to sing a song that's literally about killing white farmers based on their race and their colonial origins. But I'm not going to bother talking about it at length because this isn't the first time that's happened. If you're white and you're still in South Africa, you're basically suicidal. Just leave. Find somewhere else to go. You have no choice. It's quite clear the commies there are going to overrun you in the end. They're already abusing farmers on a regular basis. Let the farmers leave, divest themselves. You sell your land, you get that money, and go to some more civilized country, and let the South African economy fall flat. Didactics with David Lopez. Why did Moses drink so much tea? Because he rose. B. Dan 82. Any conservative groups worth donating to? Firearm Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America. Flaming TP, come for the news, stay for the cat. Yeah, we've got the stand-in cat here because the others are being lazy. Didactics with David Lopez. Hebrews. Oh, Hebrews. I was like, the first part didn't make sense. I was thinking maybe you were referencing Jesus or something. The Patriot Cairo, I'll crush you like a wordum. I don't know what that refers to. Probably a meme. It's gone over my head. Next news story. This is funny. I was going to talk about Kristi Noem and the possibility that Trump is at least considering her genuinely for a running mate. But this is much more important. Witness says Representative Ronnie Jackson handcuffed and briefly detained during a rodeo while trying to assist with a medical emergency. Now, here's the backstory of Ronnie Jackson. Well, first I should go through the backstory of this. Apparently he was at a rodeo and some teenage girl had like hypoglycemia or something, so she was seizing up. And he because he's an ER physician, he steps in to help because, you know, you're supposed to do that. If you're in medicine, if you're a doctor and someone has a medical problem, you're supposed to do what you can to try to help them. You know, unless you carry your briefcase around full of pills and needles and shit like that, it might not always be effective. But at the very least, there's someone there who's a physician and can give basic advice. Hopefully, you know, the idea is to try to save a life or to try to save someone's limb, literally in some cases. And so he intervened along with, I think, a nurse actually. And then the cops came. Of course, they had been called. He called 911 because this person's in shock, basically. And the cops, apparently, they shoved him out of the way, pushed him to the ground, handcuffed him, and briefly detained him. Then apologized because who is Ronnie Jackson? He is not just a physician, which means he is fully entitled and, in fact, legally expected to help the person who's in medical distress. He's also a sitting representative from Texas. He's a member of Congress. He's also a former rear admiral, which means he was high up in the U.S. Navy. And he happened to be the White House chief physician for both Barack Obama and Donald Trump. So I think somebody may be fired for this. And I grasped the irony of this, by the way. If it hadn't been a member of Congress / White House physician / practicing physician / rear admiral, so kind of a star-studded affair sort of dude. If this had been some random local small-town doctor, even dental assistant or something that was helping, and the cop comes and rips them away from the victim, punches them in the chest and cuffs them and stuff, you wouldn't hear a muttering fucking word about it. It was only because of who this was that the officers then uncuffed him and apologized profusely. I would sue if I were Ronnie Jackson. I'd probably also sue if I were the person in distress because the cops decided to take away a person who is qualified to best help me from the situation in order to detain that individual. I think they should face lawsuits. And I think in these cases, by the way, back the blue bullshit aside, the cop should be immediately fired. There should not be any doubt over whether an officer that behaves in this manner towards anyone, let alone a member of Congress, former White House physician, there's no doubt in my mind that that person is in a roid rage. There should be immediate drug testing, by the way, both piss and blood. They should have tested it within 10 minutes. Test for steroids, because that's likely, and cocaine, possibly too. You know, maybe the officer went into lockup and now that 5 grams is only 4.5 grams. That's inexplicable. It must be that as it ages, a little bit of it wears off, or bugs got into it. They ate the cocaine. I have a sneaking suspicion This is an element of roid rage. And the people that were there, including the relative that was already trying to help the girl, are expressing shock, disbelief at what happened. And then apparently also didn't know actually who was trying to help this girl was a member of Congress, Rear Admiral, ER physician, former White House physician, et cetera, et cetera. This is damning. And just trust me, if this can happen to a person with that many credentials, because the officer simply didn't know who they were, what do you think happens to you if a cop decides to roid rage while you're in proximity? Well, they're not going to apologize to you. They'll bash your fucking head in. And so we should be careful of the thin blue line bullshit at this point. Josh Palillo. Yeah, now, live from the living room. The Patriot Cairo, Braveheart reference, Scottish way of saying worm. Interesting. Didn't know. Kilroy was here. I just checked Google Translate, and it's true. Kamala means horrible in Finnish. From this moment on, she shall be called Horrible Harris. That's not a bad linguistic kill shot, actually. I think we go with it, Clankers. Thank you for the suggestion, Kilroy. So, yeah, we've got, again, think about how nuts this is. Former White House chief physician to both Obama and Trump. I mean, if it was just Trump, none of these liberals would care. But he also was the one that was, taking care of Obama. So he was taking care of the Lord and Savior of liberalism. Again, Rear Admiral, so high ranking in the Navy. Current ER physician, so clearly skilled. He's not just a general practitioner that you go in when you have a nosebleed. He's the person that you go to when you need something considerable going on. And he's in fucking Congress. And he gets treated like a bag of trash by the local popo. There's a reason why I'm not taken in by the typical thin blue line bullshit of some people that are commentators. Like, well, you need to back the cops. They have a hard job. Yes, there are plenty of good cops out there that do their job very well. And they don't do shit like this. But when it does happen, it should be you get fired. Not you're put on paid administrative leave while we conduct a totally thorough investigation. No, drug test them and fucking fire them. There's probably steroids in the dude's system right now. What else would account for that kind of level of aggressive behavior that you toss the physician out of the way and decide to handcuff them when they're not resisting or doing apparently anything wrong according to the bystanders? Makes absolutely no goddamn sense to retain them. Aren't they a liability to your police department? Why don't you get real? Pound some fucking sand. Next news story. This is just something I want to warn people about the dangers of super veganism. Vegan raw food diet influencer Zanadar dies of starvation. A popular influencer who subsisted entirely off a diet of exotic fruit has died of starvation at age 39, so not that much older than me, according to her friends and family. She was living in Malaysia. The Russian national, who frequently promoted raw food on social media, where she was known to her millions of viewers on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. So, in other words, definitely not necessarily the most meaningful commentator. If your main audience is TikTok and Instagram, there's probably a political and social bent to that. Named Zana Diart reportedly died on July 21st, the New York Post reports, after finally seeking medical treatment during a tour in Southeast Asia, according to local media outlets. Now, if you are a vegan, it's important to take certain supplements. I myself am not a vegan. I eat meat. Vegetarianism is fine. Like, I could probably go without meat as long as I get plenty of cottage cheese and eggs and stuff like that, because I'm never giving up dairy because it's fucking tasty. I like a good steak. Once some sausage, hot dogs, processed meat, I tend to eat less of than unprocessed meat. I prefer steak or maybe a fish or something like that. I can fry my own fish too. It's way better than fish sticks, although those are still God tier. I admit I have some guilty pleasures that aren't necessarily healthy for my body. But as far as veganism, regular veganism, you already have to take supplements. There are certain proteins you're not going to be able to get in your diet that you have to compensate for. So they get that those certain amino acids and proteins and shit built in a laboratory for all of you vegans out there. Thus using fossil fuel in the process, I would point out, but okay, you're pretending to help the earth or be kind to animals or something. Anyway, this is a super vegan. So it's not just veganism. This is a raw food vegan who apparently was for an extended time was eating virtually nothing but durian and jackfruit. You can't get any of the nutrients that you need through that process. Human beings have evolved to eat meat. They've certainly evolved to eat animal products. If you want to be kind to the cows and chickens and stuff and not eat meat or even any animal products, you're going to be reliant upon the pharmaceutical industry to supply you with pills. If you choose to sort of go halfway and you're a vegetarian, you can get the protein that you need through cheese and milk and stuff like that, and eggs and so forth. Animal products, but animal products other than their flesh. I do oppose factory farming in its modern inception. I would be willing to pay more for meat and animal products if it meant that the animals had a reasonably dignified existence, because, you know, it is cruel how we farm in general. And family farming with the cows out in the pasture and the chickens out in the pasture and shit was the norm in human existence until the relatively modern period. And yet people had reliable access to meat and eggs and things like that, milk. As long as you remove some of the regulation involved, you won't have a problem. The price will rise some, but it would still be doable for the average person. Maybe we can have a meat stipend for the poor or something like that. That'd be good. Here's your bacon allotment for the month or something like, here's your BLT for the week. That being said, veganism in general is not healthy. You are protein deficient. And I see a lot of people who are vegan claiming otherwise. No. You are protein deficient if the pharmaceutical industry does not give you pills. Your normal diet, that is the actual foods that you're eating, are not actually capable of being survivable because human beings were meant to absorb animal proteins. That's the long and short of it. We are an omnivorous species. Don't go super vegan. If you want to be a regular vegan, you're reliant on pills. Vegetarian, that's perfectly fine. It is more ethical than the factory farming for most meat products, especially things like veal. Like, I'm not going to eat veal because that's cruel. No, I don't need to eat baby cow meat from the baby cow being extra juicy and tender because they were shut up for their whole life. I'm not willing to participate in that. But having gone to actual dairy operations and shit in Vermont, if you're getting some small town milk or something, which you used to be able to get before the lockdown era in Rutland with Thompson's Dairy, then the cows are not mistreated. You can see them frolicking around out there, and they get their tits sucked every day, and they're perfectly happy. And you can tell because they make happy moos and shit. They're not being mistreated. They're not diseased or crammed in or anything like that. So don't go super vegan. It's not a good idea. Didactics with David Lopez. Fists and blood sounds like my college days. Horrible Harris, the simulation winks again. Yes, Horrible Harris. I mean, in literal translation, I suppose. The Sacred Order of Knightly Valor. R.E. Cops. A male can only gain 30 pounds of muscle without steroids, and it takes 7 years. If a cop is jacked, he's on the juice. I think it's possible to gain more than 30 pounds of muscle in the course of 7 years. I'm pretty sure that it is. Assuming a diet and exercise schedule certainly would apply. But yeah, if a dude has forearms that are this big around, you know, his name is Chunk, his nickname is Refrigerator, there's a good possibility he's on something. And then probably more than just steroids in some of these cases. But yeah, I will definitely be continuing to eat meat, although I would prefer dairy more. As far as protein sources, I like dairy, especially cheese. I got some Viking Blue in the fridge right now. I'm going to pound some of that down later, and cottage cheese. I like Italian foods. I realize they're carb rich, but tomatoes and cheese, again, are healthy. It's okay to limit your meat intake. You should eliminate as much processed meat as possible, but don't go super vegan. Raw food veganism is the least healthy you could possibly be. This woman literally withered away and died in her late 30s because she wasn't getting the vitamins that she needed. She wasn't getting the proteins. She wasn't getting, I think, probably vitamin D and a few others, and died of starvation. This will be Eugenia Cooney's fate within the next couple of years, unfortunately, probably too. Wasted bonehead. Sticks, I heard that Lizzo recently tainted the local supply of bananas in the Netherlands. My condolences. Yeah, no, because they actually ate them. They were apparently required by Lizzo to eat the pussy bananas. Swamp Donkey. 69420. The train sports secretary loves meat and trains. Also, you see Julius Malema and the EFF board champ. Yes, that's been mentioned already. The Patriot Cairo can only get vitamin A, D, E, K, and B12 from animal fat, or synthesized, I believe, in a laboratory for some of them. Deus Flex, in case you haven't seen already, Gonzalo Lira is fleeing Ukraine after being detained and tortured for his videos and faces the possibility of being sent back to die in a labor camp. He needs to come back home immediately. Last I saw, there was no further update, which means he has likely been re-detained, which means he probably is already in a labor camp, unfortunately. Alamandorius, hey Sticks, do you think the DOJ has a little spinner they flick to figure out what they're going to charge Trump with, or is it a dartboard? Probably a dartboard. They imagine it's little missiles going into an orphanage or something. Which orphan will we kill today? Boom! Ah, little Sally's dead. Ozzy's Robots, veal parmesan, français, mosse equals yummy. I'm not into veal. I'll just take a regular steak from a cow that actually lived a dignified existence before it got fucking shot in the head and carved up to be really tasty for me. I see no problem with this because in nature that cow would probably get gorged on by hyenas or wolves, or when it gets old and it staggers around after a cow stroke, it gets picked off by crows and a fox actually and gets its eyeballs eaten while it's still alive. I don't have a problem with eating meat. In fact, I think that human beings can improve upon the life and death cycle of tasty animals by simply putting them out of their misery at a convenient time, but they do need to be able to live a dignified existence first. They should be in a pasture. They should not be in a factory farm. They should not be bludgeoned over the head at the end of their life. It should be as painless as possible. We should be better than the other carnivorous animals on the planet and end their suffering. Didactics with David Lopez. That's why Steve Jobs died. He only ate fruit. I think he died of AIDS, actually. I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think that it fits the available info. And then the final news story. This is, unfortunately, this one is not a funny one, like talking about killing cows, I guess, or Lizzo. This one is actually off the chain insane. Australian childcare worker charged in horrific sex abuse case. An Australian childcare worker sexually abused 91 young girls over 15 years, police said Tuesday, accusing him of documenting his unfathomable sex abuse cases, calling it beyond the realm of anyone's imagination. I know this news will seem unfathomable, and I know that there will be many questions. Yeah, you think? Said Assistant Federal Police Commissioner Justine Gao. There is not much solace I can give to the parents and children who've been identified. No shit, because the state didn't defend them. He was doing this for 15 years. You should have taken action. Obviously, somebody came forward at some point beforehand. Included within the, count these, 1,623 charges. There are 136 counts of rape, 110 counts of sexual intercourse with a child younger than 10, a charge used instead of rape in some Australian jurisdictions, and 613 counts of making child porn. By the way, that doesn't add up to 1623, so I guess there are a shit ton of other charges. Molestation, trafficking, probably got his friends in on it or something. Can I please ask a question? And I think that it's important. In a country that is supposedly civilized, I know that the Outback may not fall into that category, but he seems to have been in the more urban areas of Australia. How is it possible for someone to be licensed as a child care worker for almost 2 decades, to have that many victims and that many individual counts? So he's raping most of these kids multiple times, and doing other things and taking pictures and video of what he's doing. How is it feasibly possible that a person can possibly operate for that long? And it gets even weirder. Investigators have been hunting for the 45-year-old man since discovering a cache of child porn shared on the dark web in 2014. It took you 9 years to find the dude? Dude, your entire culture is about, so you're worse than Britain. Your entire culture is about surveillance and facial recognition and biometrics and weird shit like that. Like you can't even take a piss in the alley without a robot coming along and telling you to stop, probably in some parts of Australia. How did he go under your radar for so long? And by the way, all of the censorship and regulation and monitoring and surveillance that you're doing and everything else under the sun, if it's not capable of compensating for a case like this, think of the children mode, why should it exist at all? This is definitely the most heinous case in Australian history. I mean, I haven't been countered by any Australian viewer on that particular topic. This is one of the most prolific cases probably in the whole world. And it happened in supposedly relatively safe, largely disarmed, heavily surveilled Australia. What is your government doing if they can't? Again, you're talking about, at least to their knowledge, you're talking about almost 100 victims. It could be more. There could be others that come forward. Maybe it's 200. Maybe it's 500. Who the fuck knows? He had 15 years to do this shit. This is wacky. It is creepy, actually. The police believe the man filmed or took pictures of all his alleged crimes and eventually cataloged more than 4,000 photos and videos of abuse. Again, I've got so many questions about this. How the fuck didn't you catch this individual? By the way, did people come forward and complain and you just didn't take him seriously? You had to wait until he put a bunch of cache of material out on the dark web almost 10 years ago before you bothered to try to find him? This doesn't make any sense. It's beyond the realm of anyone's imagination what this person did to these children, he said. This was New South Wales Assistant Police Commissioner Michael Fitzgerald. I can only say you try not to be shocked after a long period of time in the police, but this is a horrific case. No shit, dude. This makes Oliver O'Grady blush. And he got caught last year, actually, with more illicit pornography and got put back into prison after being let go into Ireland, where he had no restrictions, by the way, on his living situation, and I think lived within proximity of an elementary school, if I remember correctly. But he was a Catholic priest, so they would let him get away with it in Ireland. This dude was a child care worker. Police said the abuse happened at, get this, 10 different child care centers between 2007 and 2022 and exclusively targeted prepubescent girls, some as young as 1 year old. Again, this is some sick stuff that we're dealing with. And they didn't know. And if anyone had complained, they didn't do anything about it. I have a feeling that some people raise some concerns, like another child care worker. Little Sally's got some odd marks on her legs right now, and this dude seems to be behaving in an odd manner. I think I'll tell the admin. They tell the admin, the admin's like, oh, little Sally has that happen all the time. She's probably got an abusive family at home or something. Yeah, she's always getting whipped at home, so, those belt marks are totally normal. We're not going to tell that to the commissioner either. What the hell happened here? I mean, it's like, this is like an Albert Fish story or something like that. So, Australia, you've got to do better. People should be protesting right now. How could they possibly have missed all of the evidence? You don't have that many victims, and not a single one of them came forward and told the parents or another child care worker or a cop. It's unfathomable. It's impossible. Somebody had to have told about this probably before he dumped the material. I mean, if it was going on since 2007, you'd think that one or two people would have come forward and not listen to the don't tell anyone or we'll both get in trouble sort of shtick, or don't tell anyone or I'll kill your family sort of threat. Somebody had to have told somebody that something was going on. You tickled me funny. Somebody told a cop at some point. We're going to find out probably over the subsequent months. They're going to investigate this, and they'll, by the way, try to cover it up. They'll have the media. The media there is muzzled in Australia. They'll try to silence them. And somebody will come forward and say, look, we told them back in 2012 that this dude was a menace, and he just all of a sudden he disappeared. He went to a different childcare center. You're going to find that out. And people of Australia should be goddamn livid. They should be fucking protesting right now. Elemendorius, but Sound of Freedom is QAnon adjacent. If this is going on, I don't know how people can poo-poo away this stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's a total conspiracy theory that this sort of thing ever happens. By the way, public officials never engage in similar behavior. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. King of Biltong, as a South African, I believe that South Africa is in a civil war, but currently it's one-sided. If you're white and in South Africa, your death certificate has been issued and just awaiting a signature. Seems so, unfortunately. Anyway, I'm going to go offline. So I'm sorry to end on a sad note, because it's not exactly the most pleasant story in the world. Maybe I should have ended with Lizzo or something like that. But it is important. God damn, people in Australia, you must be damn long suffering if there isn't a queue of people outside of the police headquarters there demanding more answers. That's a lot of victims. Again, this might be the most victims, individual victims, of any pedo ever. It's possible that this is the biggest story of that kind in human history, other than in cultures where it's not frowned upon, the barbarian culture or something, Papua New Guinea. Didactics with David Lopez says wood chipper. Yeah, I would say so. Again, his victims were as young as 1 year old. So, by the way, can I ask a question? since 1-year-olds typically are not conversational. Do you know about those victims because someone came forward, or you only knew about them when pictures and video was produced in 2014? How the hell was he possibly able to get away with doing this at facilities where presumably there were other staff and they have supposedly legal oversight? Anyway, fuck it. Australia, if Australians, please listen to me. If you are not protesting this, at least in the online sense and making yourself heard, your country is shit. Effectively, it might as well dry up and die. Anyway, I'm going to go offline. I will be live again tomorrow, but keep in mind, Friday, I do have my driver's exam. That day, depending on whether I fail or pass, I'm either going to be celebrating all day, so, you know, it's going to be sushi time, probably won't live stream, or I may be a little bit bummed. So if I live stream at all, I'll be kind of low energy. I suspect that I'll pass, and it seems that the instructor is pretty confident that I'll pass. I can do all the maneuvers and shit like that, so we'll see what happens. You know, if it's an off day and someone cuts me off and I react the wrong way, you can fail from that. If I don't speed up the motorway at just the right speed, you can fail for that. And of course, I might be asked to parallel park in an area where it's a little bit too tight and I can't quite make it and bump up against a fender. But anyway, I'll try my best so that I can get hopefully a Jeep. That's number one priority. I really want one. Or if I can't get that, I'll just get a compact car because it's easier to park. And the parking spots in this country are fucking tiny. Again, links pinned above in YouTube chat, cross-platform in the description, to the Tarl Warwick Books blogs on WordPress and Blogspot. You can buy various books there, some that I've edited, some that I've written. You've got humor, you've got grotesque, really off-the-wall, hyper-modulated horror, and a lot of edited works of an academic or occult nature. So, you know, have some fun. Get something on the Freemasons, man. That's the good thing to do. That's about all. Peace out.